Hey, good morning, my good friend Gabrielle. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Vernon. I am well, thanks. How are you?
Gabrielle Gilpin, Hudson. Well, I'm not doing very well. I miss you. What? So,
I soon come visit you again.
oh boy. But guess what? We take a quick little break at about 11 o'clock. But you had mentioned, I don't know what you have planned for today, but you had mentioned about these new, we call them now.
Container houses.
Yeah. But the discussions are getting so big now, so the discussions cannot be contained.
I see what you did there. Yes, Vernon, it's true. It's a very, very hot issue right now. You have some people really in favor of them. Some people have their concerns because, it's not something new. It actually has been around internationally for quite some time. But it is something that we are just kind of catching on to, even though I actually have a friend or two who have done container offices, and have them, or, it's not uncommon to see people have container offices here. But now we're moving into container houses.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so in terms of, for anybody that's not sure what a container house is, a container house is essentially where you take an old shipping container,
Yes.
and you retrofit it to have windows, doors. You could put more than one container together to get it to be bigger. And then you put different things in there to make it like a home. So, you might put in some fixtures like a countertop, a little cooktop, a pipe. Some people put in toilet plumbing into it.
Right.
But then you kind of have to connect it back to like a pit and that kind of thing. So we're now, because we really are in need of affordable housing.
Oh, yes.
Basically these guys have come out with this solution to say, hey, we have container homes ready to sell to you. So in terms of the pricing, I'm not sure if you saw the article with the prices, but essentially they're starting at around roughly $7-8 million.
Oh, hold on.
One bedroom.
Now, what money that?
It is a lot of money, Vernon, because that doesn't include land to put it on.
My God.
So you would have to have a plot of land to put it on, or your parents' backyard, or a family plot, or whatever, to put it on, and you have to connect it up, get it delivered to you, and you're looking at a price tag of $7 or $8 million. So my personal opinion, being in construction, there are ways to, you can definitely build a similar structure out of block and steel.
Really?
For that kind of price tag and put in finishes. Yeah, man. I mean, it depends on what really kind of changes the price of construction mostly is the finishes. The concrete itself is not that expensive. I mean, it's more expensive than it has ever been.
Yes.
But it's not the most expensive input in building an affordable home. The most expensive things are like the infrastructure.
So probably our leaders should have had a team probably carry out a sort of a study to find out the various costs, because I understand there are different types of low-income housing being developed across the world. You got the impression that this container thing was the answer.
Yeah, it's definitely not the answer. I think, though, that because of the position that the country is in,
yes.
I think the government at this point is basically saying that they are open to different solutions, so that this is another potential option. But yeah, so just to kind of go over it, in my opinion, right, a couple issues. One, the client.
We're going to take a quick break within the next 30 seconds.
Let's dive into it when we come back.
Right. Okay, of course, we're talking to Gabrielle Gilpin. Now, tell us about these containers. I have read a bit, and I see where persons are. The main concern that I see being put out there is the toxic material. I don't know much about the toxic material, how the toxic material get on these containers. And I ask myself that I'm sure that some of these containers would have brought in food items into Jamaica. So are you telling me that they would have toxic material?
I guess it kind of depends on the history of the container, and what I would say is, how do you know where that container came from?
Okay.
Because toxic items are shipped in containers, and not only that, but certainly some older kind of containers would also maybe even have toxic paint potentially, that is not necessarily fit for you to live in. So there is that in terms of the concern about the materials and how safe those are. There's also the concern about insulation, right? You can put insulation inside of one of these homes, but it's a metal box. So it can get very, very hot very quickly.
Or very cold.
Or very cold,
Yeah.
right? And in terms of fire or earthquake, they haven't necessarily been found to be safe, right? So in terms of the climate
Really?
and their ability to withstand,
Yes.
hurricanes, etc., we really don't know. It would remain to be seen how well they would do as they weatherize.
But I would have expected them before they start even pushing the idea to have done some studies, look at where persons are using container homes, and to see what other methods are being used to provide low housing for low-income persons. But I'm not hearing that at all.
I'm sure, because as I said, they're fairly popular. So, I mean, in terms of going to the extent of our study, I don't know. It really is a private entity that has come out with these. So it's not really the government. The government has just endorsed it as...
But hold on there. That's where we probably went wrong. If we are going to endorse it, then we have to make sure that when it comes to housing, as far as I know, it has to be approved by the the relevant parish council.
True, because what you have in there is not necessarily approved by anyone.
Right.
When you build a house, it goes through an application process to be vetted to make sure it's structurally sound, that it can, it's fit for human habitation, that it can withstand certain forces of nature. Also, there is the concern of where you're going to put these homes and how they're going to plug into infrastructure in terms of sewage and waste management. Because, for example, when you apply to build a home, part of the whole, consideration process is looking at density. So if, for example, say you had an empty lot and then you put 20 container homes on there, that empty lot now would have potentially you need to figure out how you're going to manage the sewage or
right.
The waste coming out of these 20 container homes.
And then, as you mentioned about the density, there are some areas where almost sure part of the covenant is what the density should be like.
Right. So, that part of it's not necessarily regulated by the planning authorities, and that part of it in and of itself can get tricky. There's also the concern of what happens when you cut a container to the structural integrity of it and how you cut it. Right. It's definitely, it takes some engineering to make sure that you're maintaining the integrity of it. Again, if there's an earthquake or a fire, or how well is it going to stay, it stand the test of time, the durability. It's not quite clear. And as I said, the main concern for me is really that for the cost, when you have a container home, yes, maybe you could try to add on another container home onto it and connect them. But, it's so popular amongst Jamaicans, and I really, have to appreciate that is the option some people have open to them.
Yes.
To build on over time. So I can have my little one-bedroom and aspire to buy up my blocks, buy up my concrete, and add on my second bedroom over time, right? As I come into the cash. I could not necessarily do that with a container home. So you remove that flexibility of expansion over time, which is
so. If you ask me, we should have had this discussion before the Prime Minister endorsed it.
Well, I mean, I don't really know what to say about that, because I guess from his position, I suppose he's just looking to have more.
No, man, no. You see, we have politicians and you have the church. Everybody want our souls to be saved. The politician want to make sure they win or gain political power. But then you have checks and balances. You have the health authority, you have the engineers, the construction persons, and all these persons. We have to take into consideration what they think, because while it might be good politically to build low-income houses for consumers, and we'll jump for joy, but when we go in there and we start to bake, our fire starts, and we realize that you can't do certain things, then it's going to be a problem. And when we realize we can't expand it as easily the way we would expand, for example, a normal building. And you mentioned something that, you see, something might look cheap, but it's not too cheap after all, because the raw material for a normal house, the marl, the cement, that can be, you get that here. But the container, no. You know what cost mine a while ago? Gabrielle, but you don't tell me what cost my mind. My brain is something else. My brain is gone all over the place now. I hope you have forgotten that they stole a whole beach some years ago, I understand. I don't know if that is true, but they thief a whole beach.
Yeah, man, I know about it.
All right. So if they thief a whole beach, right? Can you imagine you go on work and you go back a lot 244?
Let's steal a container home.
No,
well, that's interesting too, because I'm not sure how you would secure it onto the ground, to be honest.
It don't matter how you secure it, they're not going with it, because guess what? That gone to the scrap metal business.
Yeah. So there's a number of issues. I think the thing about it is that it's trendy. I personally, I see container offices are super useful. You don't have to live in there. They're not the most comfortable, but they get the job done if you have a container office. Because most, even construction sites, they use a container and set it up as an office.
Right.
And put a little AC on it and stuff. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like fit for long-term human habitation. But some people might look at it and say, boy, it's a good option for them, and if they think it's a good option for them, then I can't knock it. But
guess what?
I just know it's not the affordable housing solution that we're looking for.
And if it's not a good option for them, you better believe it is going to impact on the society generally, because the cost of it, if it's not economical, you're going to still end up spending far more money, and they are going to need more salaries. So you take it.
Yeah,
and
I can say unequivocally that container homes are not the affordable home solution that Jamaica needs. It's not. We need more public-private partnerships, and we need to have more incentives for the developers to want to go into that area of development. Because what happens now is affordable housing, it is one of the lowest margin development types that you can do, right? So if I can take my money as an investor and say, okay, I can do luxury development of villas and sell them for really good money and have a really big margin or markup on them, what is attracting me or incentivizing me to pick up myself and go and do affordable homes? So that is the question that we have to ask ourselves. The other question that we have to ask ourselves is whether or not, I know that Jamaicans are very attached to the idea of standalone homes, but when you want to get down truly to affordability, it is the most expensive thing that you can do to be putting standalone homes into a community, because it requires more infrastructure, because you need you need a pipe, connection, and everything going to one little lot. Whereas when you go up and you have well-planned communities that are more dense, you can bring the cost per land and building per unit down to actually be affordable, right? So those are the kind of things that we really need to look at to really bring affordable homes to the market.
Oh, I see. You have just highlighted something else now that I wonder if those who are jumping into this thing, they have thought about. that going into high-rise buildings, although there's concern about earthquake, but standalone houses, in terms of infrastructure, that can be far more expensive to provide. The same way,
very much. Infrastructure is the most expensive part of our development project. And for every house that you have to do, you have to create an infrastructure going to that house.
And I can tell you, I've heard some figures being bandied about just to put in the sewer system for each house.
Exactly,
I hear that it is very costly.
It is very costly, Vernon. Trust me, I've had, because I have a lot of experience in the area, and
Yes.
that is the main challenge. But what we're trying to do is, because Jamaicans are so connected to this idea of having a yard and having a house, we try to stretch it, and then you end up maybe not having as nice of a place as you could have if it was just a very well planned part of our, maybe
Yes.
it doesn't have to be too high rise, right? But a more kind of apartment type community.
Right.
And the idea is that what we want to do is we want to probably have a system where it's okay for you to have a start off unit. Right? So just because you start off in this one bedroom apartment the idea is that you start off there, you build up yourself over time, and then you sell that and you move on to a 2-bedroom unit as your family grows. You don't necessarily, even the idea of adding on to, you don't necessarily need to buy somewhere and that is it for life. You can always move up and on. So we kind of need to re-look at the mindset and the expectations and, bring those expectations in line with what is sustainable and what is possible in reality. Because the standalone affordable houses are not really sustainable unless we're going to build up all of the cane land in Jamaica.
What? No, hold on. You lick your for your head. So hold on. Cane no sweet again. But guess what? We probably want to plant pineapple, hemp or something.
You want to plant, we need, and even from us, I know we're switching topics, but you don't want to build up all of your green land for agriculture.
No, hold on.
Security, is very important. So
Gabrielle, why you call it switching
careful.
topics? Why you call it switching topics? Why? Hold on.
We're going into another area.
No, it's the same area where you live, it's part of the environment.
Yeah,
So guess what? If you don't have enough green space, that is part of real estate, is part of housing. So it's the same topic.
Exactly, Vernon. So, you want to have some green space.
Yes.
And, different kind of communities where you can, and I really do truly believe that your environment informs your mentality.
Well,
right? So when we do these affordable housing schemes and they're done at a slapdash level and, you're putting people to live in there, well, that cannot be good for people's mentality. We need to build more inclusive, sustainable, well-planned communities, and they can be affordable if, all of the stakeholders come on board and put their heads together.
Gabrielle, I had made a suggestion some years ago, still continue to make it, that we get to this social media, right? No, me say the social thing when we did use that, where we their country and was come together and work together. So they used to have a thing they call free labor. So all of the farmers them go over Mass John Brown and we give free labor. And then they go over the next farmer and next so everybody place plow up and yam stick and put up on everything. And I've said to myself, it might seem old fashioned, but it could work in housing. Can you imagine if we trained our youngsters in basic construction skills, and then we could have these brigades building homes, and when you build a home, you get certain amount of credit. So after a while, you can get a home based on the credit. So your people build their homes. We have moved into this costly thing of getting this top-notch person. Mark, you have to have planners and architects and so on. But the actual construction, I think you can train your young people to build it, and we should have some construction brigades across the country.
Certainly as it relates, because a lot of people may use like form systems and so on in terms of like the walls and so forth, which kind of cuts down on the actual bricklaying.
Yes.
As far as the finishes go, in terms of well-trained tilers, window masons, roofers, carpenters, there is a demand for these things. And again, we kind not to switch topics, but we need to look at what are we training young people in to actually be useful, because there are
so the physics, chemistry, and maths
that there's a lot of need in a lot of areas, but the people that are trained in those areas are not available. Even when I was working on a construction site recently, in the thick of things after COVID, that's very difficult to find tilers because everybody's looking for a tiler.
My God, really?
Hotel work, or so there is a demand for these skill sets.
And we spend hours at teaching pick them all kind of physics and chemistry and biology. Everybody can turn doctor and lawyer.
Not everybody can be a doctor or a lawyer. No, even in the STEM space, science.
Yes.
Science,
Well, guess what?
Engineering and math.
What I'm learning from you, see, and tell me if I'm wrong, this container thing that we are suggesting now, it might not really contain the cost. It might not even contain how we use the land, because you're going to take up land space when you're alive, and when you're dead, we still fight for land space. How I see it, this land space is diminishing. So guess what? Go higher up near the sky. You probably even have to go on the sea too. Our floating homes. And when you're dead, just cremate me. Not give me no space. And we have to take up too much land and do too much something here.